Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Resident Evil 0. In the last part, we kinda got separated by Billy, but we left the laboratory and now we got a control panel with a keyhole, and well, we got a key last time with the hunters, so let's use it. If you haven't realized it yet and figured out why this place looks familiar, it's because we're at the exact same part of the factory that Leon and Claire walked through in Resident Evil 2. How we got from the facility to here doesn't make exact sense to me, but given this is all part of Umbrella's whole shtick with Raccoon City, I wouldn't be surprised if they have cable cars connecting to like 8 different facilities we've still yet to see in the series at this point, honestly. In fact, in that previous room, that was actually a save room in the original game. You can actually see the little hatch that Claire and Leon will eventually crawl through to get to this area. I just think this is a neat little reference. Prepare your ammo as best you need. I would recommend having some acid rounds around. In fact, the reason for such is why I recommended not using acid rounds against the hunters we fought towards the end of the last part. The thing I should note, though, while I've been ferrying my inventory up to this point, I do have to leave some of it behind for the moment because you actively cannot place inventory items down onto the little elevator section, even though we're about to use it. So you have to leave them on the little platform around here. Don't worry, we'll be back for them relatively soon. Just make sure you have whatever you need. I'd recommend acid rounds, the Magnum, and whatever ammo you have for that. And at least one healing item. Maybe a handgun with a full clip if you have the inventory space, but don't worry too much if you don't. What I do also recommend is saving, especially if it's your first playthrough or two, and especially if you're lower on health or ammo, because you're coming up, I'd say, on potentially the hardest part of the game. I say potentially because there's a couple of parts I could see being different, hardest parts for different people. Good old familiar area. In fact, if we check the far side, we'll see a very familiar sight to players of Resident Evil 2. There's also an elevator over here. It's not working right now, so I'll have to come back for this later, I guess. Just think there's an entire climax of a different game just beyond these doors, but I want the shiny thing.
Don't shoot! You're alive.
Are you okay, Rebecca?
Where is everybody?
They should have arrived here before me. Haven't you seen them? That's unfortunate. If we go straight from here, we should arrive at an old mansion which Umbrella uses for research. Come on, let's go.
Wait! I've got to find Billy.
Billy Cohen? You mean you found that criminal?
Yes, but we got separated and...
No point worrying about him. He won't make it. Come on, let's go.
Sir, please. I need to find him. Don't worry, I'll catch up with you.
Rebecca... All right. Just be careful.
I never saw him again.
That cutscene makes me laugh every time I play this because something about the way the lines progress just feels so unnatural, even for Resident Evil dialogue. Especially just the last moment, and I never saw him again. I can't quite parse why into words, it just feels off. So that shiny thing down there on the other end is a key we need to actually access this elevator, but because my inventory's full, I'm dumping some Magnum ammo on that side of the area so I can come over here and pick it up and actually use it. Trust me, you want to dump things in this area on that side of the area for the moment. It'll save you some headache in the next few minutes. The door reads security room. There's no need to search this place. Rebecca, you could even leave a little note for a future S.T.A.R.S member. I mean, come on. Either way, this device looks like it's used to activate the elevator. There's a keyhole. Key? Meet keyhole? The elevator's been activated. Yay!
What is that?
Time for the most out-of-nowhere boss fight in the game, and depending on what you bring in for the armaments, the most dangerous. This is the Proto-tyrant. Like many tyrants, it is fast, it swipes with its claws really wide, and it is hard to get around. Additionally, if you're low enough on health, it can just stab you with its claw, instant killing you. Best weapons to use against this are the Magnum, which I think will two-shot it, but also acid rounds, which will take it out in about 2 shots. Not a lot of health, but be careful of the damage. The Magnum bullets are probably the best thing to use here overall, but to be frank, it's a bit of a rough fight no matter what. The moment it falls down, you are good. Don't waste any more ammo. And this, we never spoke of it again. But now we have access to this elevator, which is, I think, one of the most interesting things in the game in terms of how it's designed. This elevator is going to allow us to access this floor, of course. It also allows us to access the endgame area, effectively. But there's 2 more floors it can visit on top of that. One of them is actually back towards where we came in from the cable car, so it'll bring us back up to where we started the part, and thus I can ferry my inventory to here from there. But then there's the other floor beyond that. We're on level 3, level 4 is plot progress, level 2 is where we're gonna go to ferry my inventory back and forth, but level 1 is worth noting all the same. Level 1 takes you back to the room where the Ecliptic Express crashed in, so it gives you a shortcut back all the way to, effectively, the start of the main meat of the game. So if there's any items you left behind at the Ecliptic Express, or even back in the main hall of the trading facility, you could go and grab those now. This is another reason where my moving of items back and forth has been a bit overkill, because I could have left some items behind, like a couple of healing items at the main hall, and just ferried them back and forth from here to get them to the endgame area more effectively, but I'm paranoid about that kind of stuff, so I went the extra mile to just bring everything with me at every step. Hello, Hunter. That's a waste of a Magnum shell right there. Oh, that's terrifying. I would have used other things or gotten around this Hunter otherwise, but I literally had no other items, so oh well. As it is, I still have plenty of Magnum ammo for the final boss, and the one fight I want to use it on potentially outside of that, on top of whatever ammo we find in the remainder of the game. As much as I've gone overboard with my inventory management, I love this elevator's existence because it really does allow you to effectively reach anything that you've left behind in the game. And I like that because not even some of the other Resident Evils I like more do something to this level. Usually there's an area you can no longer access past a certain point, and the usual way around that is the existence of the item boxes, admittedly. But for this game, I like that they have this amount of backtracking you can do in the case you want to go get a healing item you left behind in an area all the way earlier in the game. Would I do that if I did? Probably not. That's why I've ferried my inventory all the way here, but I appreciate the existence for people who will use it. If anything, this elevator goes to prove that they really did always slightly improve the classic Resident Evil games as they went along in some form. Like, Resi 1 to 2 is a direct upgrade, I think, in terms of combat versatility, but also some very minor level design things in terms of how things loop around to each other. 3 improves the combat angle once again with the gunpowder system. Code Veronica improves it in some minor 3D things and animation-wise. Then 0 comes in with this level of design upgrade. And then Remake just kind of takes every note learned along the way and makes arguably the most well-rounded, classic-styled Resident Evil. I might prefer classic Resident Evil 1 to remake and Resident Evil 2 classic overall to any of them, but genuinely, remake is where they kind of peaked with a lot of this, so it's no wonder we really haven't gotten a game in this style since. Although I think it'd be really fun if Resident Evil 9 ended up being in this style, just as like a, hey, we hit the peak of the first-person stuff in 8, we hit the peak of the third-person stuff in the 4 remake, let's go back to basics and try this again. Especially considering in the last year, 2 or 3, we've gotten quite a few indie games that are trying to be this sort of Resident Evil. Like, there was one, I think, in the last year called Alice or something along those lines. There was one I remember Nitro Rad covered in, like, 2020, 2021, somewhere around there. Be really neat to see if they could give this formula another shot. Going back to the key staff of the game, though. There's 2 notable people before we get to the outright programmers left to talk about. One of them is Tatsuya Minami, who is the game's overall producer. For now, though, we've gotten all my inventory that I care about into this elevator, so let's head on down to the final floor and finally enter the true endgame area.
Playtime is over. You and your friends no longer amuse me. Good riddance. Now nothing will stop me from getting my revenge.
So, like, I get, even with knowledge of what comes later, why you want revenge on Umbrella. Why do you care about Rebecca and Billy besides the fact they're in your personal space here, buddy? I mean, come on. Seems kind of weak. And then Billy died again. 2 deaths in 2 parts. I mean, poor Billy. Welcome to the treatment facility. We are spending the rest of the game here. And honestly, it's not that bad. Some of the rooms can get a little samey looking, but ultimately it's pretty easy to navigate this place. I don't think there's many puzzles that are that hard to figure out as well. Heck, we're coming up on one right now. But hey, get the handgun ammo first. Definitely got a lot of that ready for zombies around here. Welcome to the first puzzle of the area. As soon as I find the right point to investigate. There we are. Dam area power supply panel. Designate a point to receive power. Power can be supplied to any location up to 2 points away. Change points? Yeah. So what this is, you're selecting one of the circles up to 3 times. Whenever you select one, the dots up to 2 away from it will also receive power. Select 3 points until every point turns green. Select the ones I'm selecting here, and you should be fine. This puzzle never changes. It's honestly kind of a gimme in the long run. And that powers up a lot of the facility, so now we can also use the elevator in this room to reach downwards. So now I'm going to ferry my inventory back and forth. So, in the meanwhile, let's go back to the game's staff for a moment. Listed as the overall producer for the game is Tatsuya Minami, who's no stranger to Resident Evil, let alone Capcom. He's been around since being a game designer for the Little Nemo game on the NES. He would later be a planner for Final Fight, Super Ghouls and Ghosts. He was an advisor of Mega Man's 5 and 6. He was a producer for the series starting with Resident Evil 1, at which point he was a producer for a lot of Capcom's output on the PS1, Game Boy Color, like Mega Man Extreme 1 and 2, Dead Aim producer, X7 general producer, and is still being a producer to this day for Capcom and Resident Evil, being even a producer on Resident Evil 3 and 4, as well as 4's DLC. So they've been around the block quite a bit on Capcom's games. Taking the elevator down, we got a room filled with a couple of zombies. For my taste, it's going to be ferrying items back and forth still. I'm going to take them all out. I would recommend the grenade launcher for this, or the handgun. It doesn't matter which. You'll probably have plenty of handgun ammo to survive anything coming up, so don't worry too much about it. And since this game, this particular room is a lot of very thin straightaways, you have plenty of space to hit them before they get close to you. So finally, the last of the main key staff before we get into programming stuff is the director of the game, who is Koji Oda. They were in the special thanks section for Street Fighter Alpha 2 as their first appearance, but then they were a system planner and camera worker for Resident Evil 1, as well as the further ports of that. They were staff on Marvel Superheroes, and this was their first big role as a director for this. They then became an advisor on Oogie's Revenge, system planner for the Director's Cut ports of PSP, Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins on PSP, they were coordinator. Fast forward a bit, they then became the director for Mega Man 11. At least, I think, on the PC port. They're also a monster designer for Monster Hunter Rise. Kind of a weird career in terms of how all over the place it is, but honestly, I kind of respect that in a very weird way, because it shows they probably have a lot of talents in various departments that the company likes having around. So from here is where I have to start being picky with who I talk about in the staff, because the overall staff for this game is 400 some odd individuals, counting special thanks. And that's a lot of people, and these people have worked on a lot of games across the years with Capcom. For instance, the program supervisor, which is the next section after the director, is Shuichiro Chiboshi, who is a programmer for Mega Man X4, did some event programming for Resident Evil 1, programmer for Street Fighter Alpha 2. There were some tech for Babylon's Fall of all things, and programming on Nier Automata as well as Astral Chain. But then on the flip side, literally the next person credited is Yoshifumi Hirao, who was a main programmer on this, was a battle system programmer for Onimusha 3, but then the next game of Super Note they did was Final Fantasy Typo HD, which they were a main programmer for, as well as some stuff for Hexadrive in 15. And then they're, once again, a lead combat engineer in Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. There's some other games I didn't mention there, but there are a lot of things that just kind of fell through the woodwork, like the Avatar game for the DS. Last Airbender Avatar, I should note. By the way, this is the last Mimicry Marcus in the game, so once you kill this, don't worry about them for the rest of it. I think as well, if you leave this one alone, when we eventually trek back through here for other reasons, they'll just be replaced by zombies, I think. Like, jumping around in the credits a little bit from here. The background graphics supervisor, for instance, is Koichi Minami, who did the backgrounds, or at least some of the backgrounds for Resident Evil 3, did some environment work for Devil May Cry 1, as well as some background production for Okami, some same stuff in Vanquish, Bayonetta, and they're still technically with Resident Evil to this day, because they did environment stuff for the 3 remake, as well as some advising on Evil Within 2. Meanwhile, the character designs were by Toshiaki Mori, who some people might know as the name Shinkiro, because they used to do a lot of illustration work for SNK, namely in Capcom vs. SNK as a series. Did some designing for Super Ghouls and Ghosts, promotional design for RE4, CG illustrations for Dead Rising. They've been on the art team for a while. Their most recent roles in that are Street Fighter 6 and Exoprimal. And meanwhile, the enemy designer for this one, I guess creature artist technically is what they're credited as, is Yoshihiro Ono, who did some publicity stuff for Resident Evil 2, but was an illustrator for Dino Stalker, a CG modeler for the Outbreak games, and did a lot of CG artwork for Monster Hunter Tri through Rise. I know I love talking about the staff in my LPs nowadays, especially ones that have like a lot of things of note under their name. But doing that for a lot of games starting from the GameCube generation on is rough, because we start regularly getting staff counts in the hundreds, if not by the time we hit the PS3 and PS4 gens. Upwards of thousands plus. Heck, that's partially why I've basically not talked about it up until like the last 2 parts or so. Because, again, as I mentioned I think last time, if I talked about every person in the staff, I think I wouldn't have any time to talk about the game whatsoever. So that little bar area back there is where we get the map, but you actually don't have much to do there. We're actually going to be in this room more often than not. You could combine these herbs right now. I actually might recommend waiting on that. In fact, this area here is going to become an inventory dumping ground for me down the line, because this is a relatively central area to further parts of the treatment plant moving forward. Honestly, there's a couple of items in the next couple of rooms I could recommend holding off on picking up, because you could just use that previous room we were just in as a dumping ground instead of where I've actually dumped my items at the moment. But I'd recommend holding off on that if you're low on inventory space, period. Until you're at least in the room after the one coming up, for reasons we will see momentarily. I don't know why. Genuinely, I think Remake and Zero are very gorgeous games in terms of their background detail. Something about the way they render concrete walls in specific feels way too realistic for my eyes to comprehend in a way that's like, wow, that's just a pre-rendered image. I can't quite place why. They're just absurdly good at it.
Rebecca, where am I?
You're safe now. Are you okay? What could have done this?
They must have been used as test subjects in Marcus's research. He must have kept messing around with the mother virus.
Billy?
And thus we get Billy back after he has a understandable moment to pause. And thus we can give him all the shotgun shells because I'm not going to need them moving forward. In fact, I think I also give him all the handgun ammo just because I have the Magnum. So now that we've reunited with Billy, there are now new areas we'll be able to easily explore in this area. There's also another door in this room that you can technically investigate, but it's locked, so you can't actually get through it. So our goal for right now is to backtrack a couple of rooms and get stuff down now that we actually have Billy with us. In particular, the next room has some things of note we're going to want to get done since we have both characters again. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. I found that sound effect really satisfying, weirdly. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 12, we're going to dive really deep into the treatment plant to see what we can find around here. See you guys then.